Welcome to This Is Whole Life, a podcast from the Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida.
Join me, Ken Wetmore, lead pastor, and Melanie Bachman, our worship pastor, along with our communication team, Randy and Lucas. Take a look back, a look deeper, and a peek into the week ahead.
Here we explore meaningful conversations about spirituality, community, and living with purpose.
We don't have all the answers, but we are walking the journey together.
Wherever you're listening from, you're wanted here.
This is Whole Life.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 510 of This Is Whole Life. We're digging deeper into the message from this past week, as always. And that was a message from Ken Wetmore called The End Game. You can find that. That's from March 14th. You can find that in our Speaking of Grace, our sister podcast. Swipe up in today's show notes. You'll find that. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that. And we're going to find out maybe how that impacts greater things. It's been almost 100 years here at Whole Life, coming up in September. So kind of mark your calendar. It's September 19th, is it?
Ooh, you didn't warn me ahead of time, Randy, but I will get my calendar out right now.
I believe it is.
I feel like we've had this conversation before.
I know, but I like to bring it up just at random every so often.
I think if we just throw out September, we're going to be safe.
So, because you can't do 100 years and not do some celebrating.
You got to celebrate.
And we were Lucas and I were at a conference 2 weeks ago, and we sat at a table with a church from Pensacola, who just turned 105. So we felt like we were in good company. So
there you go.
All right. So, every week we hope that we hear from you, the people listening every week. And so 407-965-1607, you can send a voicemail or text or podcast at wholelife.church. That's super easy. Let us know what you're thinking. And I am happy to report, guys, that the Slack channel is picking up speed because now we're actually having conversations in the Slack channel that, talk about what we're talking about here, of course, because that's what it's there for. So we had two updates on the Slack channel. One was from Lillian, and hers was more of just kind of a commentary, but I thought it was nice that when you hear people that have been listening to the message, you've been listening to the podcast, and then you kind of come to some conclusions. Like Ken's like, I can tell you what to do, or I can tell you what to think, but it's more fun if you go do it yourself. So Lillian, here's to you. She wrote in on the Slack channel after last week's message, which was on the final message of the greatest of these series, and that was on agape love. And she said, just kind of setting it up, I'm part of the Florida Conference Singles Ministry. In our WhatsApp group, the discussion question for this week was, what is love? And this was my answer. After our church finished a 4-part series on love, I now think romantic love is a combo of the 4 types of love. I'm really enjoying this, Lillian, so thank you for this. 4 types of love: eros, attraction; phileo, friendship; storge, instinctual; and agape, choice. I think it's important to build your relationship with your future spouse on phileo, friendship, love, so that when things get tough or boring in marriage, you're still able to tolerate being around each other. Oh, tolerate, that's a good one. Talk to each other and get through those hard parts. As the relationship grows and blossoms, you'll agape them. You'll choose to love them unconditionally and have storge love, strong sense of devotion and protection. Many think eros love shows up only when you first see someone, which is physical attraction. However, I think this can also develop over time, where they become attractive based on their character or intelligence, which is sapiosexual, or because of a strong emotional bond, demisexual. And so then underneath of that, Aaron and Lillian continue to have a conversation. So that's kind of what the Slack channel is there for, is to have a little discussion. Awesome. And I just thought it was a thoughtful idea, Lillian, that you came up with, just using what we were talking about and discussing, and that was cool. So thank you.
Well, we love the idea that sermons are where discussions start and not end. Love that.
Yeah, interactive. That's perfect. And then Nate had a question, and this was also based on more or less, I think, on the series, but specifically the conversation between Jesus and Peter. He said, as I reflect on the use of the Greek words that English translates as love, I ponder on what the interaction between Jesus and Peter really was that is told in John 21. it would seem unlikely that Jesus and Peter had a conversation in Greek. Peter likely spoke Aramaic, and even if they did speak in Greek, it's unlikely Peter would have been familiar with the new understanding of the word agape. I'm left wondering if Peter understood what Jesus was asking, or if he was simply unwilling to commit to that level of love. When John writes about the interaction years later, he's trying to relate concepts of the conversation and continue the theme of his book. I wonder how much John is developing the Christian understanding of agape.
What a great question. That's such a good question. Oddly enough, Melanie and I have had a discussion about this.
Is that why we were having the
I'm
look?
just laughing because, we've had this conversation because this is Nate that wrote that in,
Correct,
right?
yes.
Not Melanie? Okay,
Yep.
just checking. Just checking on that.
Melanie in disguise.
So we had this conversation, and Nate, I 100% think you're correct. The conversation between Jesus and Peter almost surely was in Aramaic. It's pretty hard to believe it would have been in Greek. Based on where they were and who they were. And so, yes, that conversation took place in Aramaic. And years later, when John goes to describe it, he's translating from what Jesus and Peter discussed into Greek, the concepts that he's trying to get across to us. And so for me, that actually makes it even more interesting because clearly John is trying to communicate something with us. He picks out these words very purposefully, and he's trying to communicate to his reader a concept of what's going on because, again, he probably translated from Aramaic. So did Jesus have a more nuanced conversation that John condenses a little bit by using phileo and agape? Perhaps. It would have been very interesting. I guess we'll get to find out one day. But for sure, what we know is that when John wrote his gospel, he was really trying to communicate with us this idea of what was happening between Peter and Jesus, and that what I believe was a very restorative conversation.
Nice. Well, that puts a different spin on it when you think about it that way. So as soon as I read that, I've been kind of pondering that this week as I knew we were going to get to it today. But that was
and Nate, we want to thank you for waiting 2 weeks to turn that in. So especially since it didn't come in during the sermon, which would have really just been somewhat hard there was a lot of concepts in there to begin with, and to add that one, which is, by the way, why I didn't add that into the sermon, because it's going to take a lot of people. It'll be a hard one to process all that and the other information. So
it kind of was.
We have super smart people here, but just try to do it one concept at a time.
Well, thanks, Nate. We appreciate the thought process going through that. And
super good.
It's always fun just when you hit a message that hits those pieces that you just can't stop thinking about, and it makes you wonder. But thanks for letting it wonder in your mind and then actually sharing it with us. So that's good. I really can't wait to get into this message because we had a great, the service this week it seemed a little bit different. And so thank you, Melanie, for allowing it to go down that way, because as you're watching and you're all wrapped up in the good feels of connected. There's a little kind of hype video just showing like all the hours, and all of a sudden, wake up, Ken, there's a naked man in the house. And you're like, wait, what? What? The scratch of the record.
Just imagine how I felt when I heard that.
Yeah, I think we should all just really thank Lucas for using restraint on the visuals for this week's sermon.
I tried my best.
Well,
good judgment. Good judgment.
The funny part was, as soon as I heard the story, I was like, just watch this. We didn't need visuals because my mind was just contemplating Ken battling the naked guy while not really fully clothed himself. And I'm laughing. And then immediately my mind went to a story that involved another naked guy battling a possible intruder, except the naked guy was me. And so, when we first came
you have a story, huh?
Yeah, we first came to Florida, And we hadn't moved yet. We were deciding whether we
good.
were
I
going to move.
was worried there for a minute. You're going to tell me you were living in Guam at this one point, and
It's like, I don't remember you looking like Randy, but we're close enough in age. Maybe it was.
there wasn't a whole lot of eye contact. It's kind of not. Well, maybe there was a whole lot of eye contact. Now that I think about it, now maybe that's what I really want to say. There was, a lot of trying to not look directly at the person. So.
We were here for about 3 weeks. We were house sitting for my relatives, and we'd flown down from Wisconsin, and we were, just enjoying hanging out by the pool, going to the beach, getting a tan. And so we got in bed one night, and we were in the end of the house that had the guest room in it, and the guest bath, pool bath. And there was a long closet. And if you're in Florida, you know that everyone at some point puts up white wire shelves in their house until they realize it's a bad idea, and then they do something different. So this closet it was pretty full, and Heather and I are sound asleep. Had been outside. I think that was after, if I remember correctly, I'd gotten sunburned, had the fan on, trying to cool off, and all of a sudden you hear just this immense crash, things falling, things smashing, and it was in the closet. So we both sat up in bed. This is a house we're not really, I've been there. I'd stayed there, I think, one other time when I was younger. But first time you're there and there's nobody else around. And, Wisconsin, nobody has alarm systems in their house. So I'm like, did I set the alarm? And I'm like, how did somebody get in if I didn't, if I set the alarm? And then we're listening, and you can hear your heartbeat because you've just been woken out of a sleep.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you hear in the room, in the closet, the door's still shut. And there's like this wrinkling, crackling sound. I'm like, there's somebody in here.
I think I've seen this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then first thing Heather's like, I hope that the cats weren't in there. Because now.
Priorities, Heather.
Well,
priorities.
the cats that we were paid and to come and to watch and take care of might now be dead underneath piles of luggage and whatever else was in the closet. And so we both looked at each other, and it's like, she's like, are you going to go check it out? I'm like, why me? And she's like, well, why me? And I'm like, all right. I'll go. So I'm standing there. There's nothing in the room that I can use for defense. So I go over and open the door and whip the light on. And it was just all of the white shelving had come out of the wall and just crashed everything that was on top of it. But the noise was wrapping paper. Things sliding on slippery wrapping paper, but it kept moving. Things kept shifting, so it really sounded like somebody was inside. I'm just glad it wasn't, because I was resonating with Ken's story. It's like, well, here I am. I'm not clothed, and I'm going to battle the robber or the thieves or whatever. This is not cool. Yeah. So, anyway, I resonated with the dread of being the one that had to go and fight. Well, at least there was no fight.
None.
He just left.
No, he left after being
yelled
not
at.
particularly kindly asked to leave.
Did you ever find out? Did you like the cops come? Did you ever find out anything?
We called 911 and they didn't answer. It was a little made me a little bit more concerned. But what we found out from our landlord, apparently this individual, as I told in this sermon, he had a mental health issue that his family really didn't know how to deal with, and we're certainly not dealing with in the best way for him. And so they would chain him in a bathroom in their basement, from what I understand.
Oh my!
Without any clothes on, because anyway, for whatever reason they did that, and so he would occasionally escape and break into somebody's house and vent his wrath on bathrooms in the house. So he would lock himself in the bathroom and tear the toilet out of the wall and the sink out of the wall, and just generally destroy the bathroom before somebody stopped it from happening. So our landlord was very kind to me, because I broke the door pretty significantly, and I said, well, I guess I owe you for that. And she said, oh no, I will be happy to pay for that because you got in there before you started tearing out the toilet and everything else. So I will be happy to take care of that. So it was very kind of her. And
so this person was kind of known.
But yeah. And I think that the sad part for me, like I said at the end of the sermon, was that in my concern for myself and my safety, I was far less concerned about what this guy was going through. And clearly he had a pretty difficult and tragic life. But that was not, unfortunately, my top concern when he was in there. I was more worried about me. And I guess for me, it kind of hit home as I was preparing the sermon. I'd never really thought about it until I was really preparing the sermon. How many of us, as we start thinking about the last days, our biggest concern is us? How am I going to make it? How am I going to be okay? How will I take care of my family? What will happen if I'm persecuted? What will happen if, me. And at least that's the way I've been. Maybe that's not the case for everybody else. But I wonder if, I know when I hear Jesus talk about what it means to be ready, his biggest concern and what he's wanting for us is for us to be less concerned about ourselves and more concerned about those in the world who are hurting and who are suffering and who are going through difficult times, and to refocus onto others rather than onto ourselves.
Yeah. I should have known when the title of the sermon was Endgame, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. I mean, that's something that as a kid we heard all the time. That was whether it was in school, whether it was in a sermon, and the statement that was it was used, it was cultivated for me, just a sense of dread that it's like, well, if you're doing, and then insert your favorite sin, when Jesus comes, you're not going to have time to repent. And even if you did, it wouldn't mean anything, because then it would just be because you knew you were in trouble and you were going to miss out. And then you were going to be,
you'll be like those five bridesmaids that weren't prepared. You're going to be banging on the door, and the king will say, or the bridegroom will say, "I don't know you," and you wanted to be there, but the bridegroom didn't want you to be there, so you failed the test, and look at you, you don't get in.
Yeah, that was scary though.
Oh,
that was like terrifying. Yeah, no, and
because we were all kind of naughty a little bit, right? And I mean,
well, some of us more than others.
Yeah, to whatever extent. And so I remember having a week of prayer speaker come to my school, and we all got our Top Gun soundtrack and burned them, and whatever else. That rock music, got rid of it and burned it, and because you didn't want to be listening to that kind of music or watching those kind of movies when probation closed, because you could repent for it afterwards, but it would be too late.
I really lament the amount of time in my life I have spent thinking about and worrying about end time stuff. It's just, I feel like, it's such a great way to control people, is to create a fear. And then you set a set of established rules that people need to follow. And, how you dress, how you think, what you eat, all of those different pieces now suddenly have massive cosmic consequences. And I think it's layered trauma is what it is. And it's really easy, I think, for me and for a lot of other people that I know, even though cognitively that's not where I am anymore, there is an emotional default that can be triggered really easily when someone starts talking about end time.
Yeah, you can go back. The DeLorean at 88 miles an hour is no more reliable than your mind to get you back to where you're immediately back in that spot.
Yeah.
Where you feel it. And I remember having a conversation with someone very close to me who is old enough to way older than me, but they're old enough to remember those and still fight with those, and told me, "I'm jealous of you." I was like, "You're jealous of me? Like, why would you be jealous of me?" "Well, because you believe you're saved." And I'm like, "I do." I'm like, I'm if it's about the things I can control, well, then that doesn't make any sense, because everyone knows I'm not available at that point. I've been kicked off the roster a long time ago. I don't qualify. But I'm like, if we believe what Jesus says, then you have to trust in that, and that's where you have to put your faith. But I like the way Ken put it, where Jesus isn't worried so much about us because we should already know, but we should be helping those that don't. And that really changes that narrative. But I also wonder how effective that is in counterbalancing until you really stop and think about it. And to counterbalance, like you said, how fast we can go back to that crutch of, oh man, I should really do, not that we don't want to do better in things, but I really should be careful of this or this because, it's doom and gloom for me. And it's not a positive headspace to be in at all. I don't think you can do what Ken's asking us to do if you're in that headspace, because it doesn't make any sense, right?
Right. No, if you're constantly worried about your survival, there's no flourishing in that.
Well, and there's no reason.
And the funny thing to me is it's the opposite of what Christ preaches. Christ preaches selflessness,
right?
And yet we create a religion where we encourage people to be self-preoccupied.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did I do this? Did I do that? Did I witness enough? Am I not doing that? Do I have enough beans in have I figured out how to eat the wild edibles? And have I and we become very self-focused instead of outward focused, which is what I hear Christ preaching continually throughout the Gospels. I mean, when you look at what's going on, like go ahead and use the 10 bridesmaids as the example. Why are they supposed to have oil? Is it so they can have oil? No, it's because the oil is going to be used in the lamp
Right.
that's going to light the way for the bridegroom. It's to provide light for the community. It's to do something for others. It's not because so they can have a lamp so they can go ahead and follow the bridegroom. It's for the community. And again, I think you have to always beware of people that start making you using fear to make you do something. Fear is a very, very effective tool for manipulation. And I don't believe it's a biblical tool. When I look at the Bible and I see that perfect love casts out fear, and when I hear Jesus saying, my peace I give you, my peace I leave with you, I think there's something wrong when we create things that don't leave people with peace, that don't leave them. And I can just hear somebody out there saying, but you got to tell them the truth. And sometimes the truth is going to make you feel afraid. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, because there seems to be the people that enjoy telling the truth in a way that's terrifying. And then there's those who tell the truth in a way that's hearable. I could tell my kids every single thing when they were little. I could have told them every single thing that's going to get them out there, and that will scare them. It's the truth, but is it helpful? Or I can teach them the principles that they need to know to stay safe without leaving them terrified.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and even that the idea of witnessing, which somebody could conceivably say, "Oh, that's outward focused," but if it's motivated by fear and self-preservation, then you're not really caring about the other person, how they receive it, whether or not they're ready to receive it, whether they can even hear you, how it's going to impact their lives. You're more worried about checking off the witnessing box. And I think that's why we end up with so many of these weird, awkward encounters where one person sort of walks away feeling triumphant for having checked that box, and the other person is like, what the heck just happened?
Or and the one person walks off being like, what a shame that they rejected the truth. When we didn't put that truth out in a way that any normal person would actually want to hear.
Want it.
And I just think that there's so many different ways you can share what you believe with people without being offensive, without being just dumping on somebody in a way that, would you respond to somebody? You think about it. It's amazing to me how many people will make fun of a religion that isn't their own that witnesses to them, and then go use the same tactics that religion or that denomination is using for their own methods and means. And so I just, if it doesn't work well with you, why would it work well when you do it to someone else?
So are the good works more of a consequence of following Christ than an intentional effort to do the right thing?
For me, apple trees are going to be apple trees and orange trees are going to be orange trees. Jesus said any tree that is planted in the proper place should be bearing fruit. Trees don't bear fruit because they're trying. You don't watch an apple tree just sit there and be like, I've got to do this. It's a natural consequence of being planted in the right place, receiving the right water, the right amount, and the right amount of sunlight. And as Christians, I know that metaphor, where you plant yourself, are you getting watered by the Holy Spirit? Are you receiving sunlight from Jesus? These are things, you can, and every metaphor can break down somewhere. So if you're breaking my metaphor down, I totally understand. I do that too when I hear them, but just hear it though. A lot, James, we often think that James and Paul are saying two different things, because Paul says I tell you this, we're not saved by works, but we're saved through faith in Christ. And James says, we're not saved by faith alone, we're saved by what we do. And we're like, well, here's a place where the Bible is disagreeing with itself. And I don't see it that way. I see James basically just saying, look, because he says, you show me your faith, I'll show you my works that show you that I have faith. And that's really what he's saying is, if you're an orange tree, you're going to produce oranges. It's not if you're an apple tree, you're going to produce apples. And if you are in a love relationship with Jesus, you are going to produce good fruit. You're not necessarily going to be perfect. Doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes. But your life will be on a trajectory. It will be on a trajectory towards greater things, if we can say that. And so that's what I really want people to walk away with. I think that there's so many people who they do the right thing, not because they love Jesus, but because they want Jesus to love them. They think that Jesus won't love them if they're not doing these things. And that's not the way Jesus phrased it. Jesus didn't say, if you want me to love me, if you want me to love you, keep my commandments.
Yeah.
He said, if you love me, keep my commandments. It's what flows out of us when we care about Jesus, because that's what Jesus cares about. We're not doing it to earn his love. We're doing it because we are loved and because we know the difference it's made in our life. I can just tell you that the times I've experienced unconditional love in my life have always inspired me to try to show that love to other people. Whether it was my boss, Mana, who encouraged me to do an interview for another job, not because she wanted me to not work for her, but because she knew it was what was best for my family. That was selfless. And I've always wanted to be that kind of a boss after that. I've been inspired by that kind of kindness and love and care for me as a person. And I just wish that as Christians that we would spend more time demonstrating love than trying to terrify people into following Jesus. I just don't think that's the way of Christ. I just don't.
Well, and I think part of that, like you mentioned, is you can tell the truth in a way that scares people. You can tell the truth in a way that inspires people, brings them confident. And I really liked the bridesmaids, and I never really thought about that or never heard it preached for sure that way, that the light wasn't for them. And so much times it's been preached enough to me where you feel like, man, those greedy five, come on. I don't believe that there wouldn't have been enough, and it leads you down that path where, again, it's a divisive us versus them. And
you could have given just enough oil so that everybody would have had oil until the bridegroom showed up. And then, then when you run out, not a big deal.
Right. Yeah. But it's another divisive tool that makes it like, man, you really don't want to be like those guys. Yeah. You want to be like the other ones instead of realizing, like, who are we putting that oil there for? Then it makes a difference, because if you fail, the whole thing fails. So, and then you also punish for not taking risks. I thought that was a good insight that I don't think I've ever put together with that parable. So the three parables that we've all heard, if you've grown up Christian, for sure, if you've grown up Adventist, these are ones that we talk about a lot. And then, how are you treating those around you, the sheep and the goats, while you're all waiting for this grand return? what's your life like? How are you involved? How are you impacting the people around you, your community, even maybe your family, instead of worrying about it's just me, whether or not I'm going to so hyper focused on my faults. When Jesus says, if you believe and you're, concentrating on the outside. So just that part alone, just to me, made it really feel like we're trying to be together on this. And it's a different perspective. And I think you can look at the end game, if it were, as it were, differently.
I think we should go back to the idea of taking risks. What does that look like, taking risks with resources that you've been given? Because I think some people could hear that, and again, taking risks means going out to somebody and creating an awkward encounter to share Jesus. So when you're talking about taking risks and you're thinking about using resources in a way that's like a calculated sort of risk, what are you thinking of, Ken?
Well, I think about our values at Whole Life. I think about the value of inclusion. It's risky to be inclusive of everyone. When we say all means all, that's risky.
Yeah.
Because it involves things that can feel a little scary if we're going to just say it. Well, if I'm going to go to church with people that don't think like me, that don't act like me, that have differences, if I'm going to allow those people to be around me and my kids, well, that seems risky. But it's that radical inclusiveness and innovation. As a pastor, I can tell you that one of the things that pastors get rewarded for, not intentionally but unintentionally, is for not taking risks. Because as long as people aren't complaining about me, my job is pretty safe.
Yeah.
But as soon as I start taking some risks and trying to do some things and people start complaining, that's when my job becomes at risk. And so there's a lot of pressure, if you want to feed your kids and your family and take care of them the way they deserve to just go with the flow, because that's the way that will result in you getting a paycheck, doing what you love. And frankly, it's just a lot easier not to have people complaining about you. I can tell you, there are very few people that I'm aware of that enjoy being told that they're terrible. I can tell you for me, one of the most hurtful things ever is to be working in the job I am, getting the paycheck that I'm getting. I appreciate my paycheck. I do. But I know about myself that I could be out working in another job that would pay me far more than what I'm making right now. And it's a very hurtful thing for me. And I hate to put it out there but for me, when I have somebody come up to me and tell me, oh, you don't care about people. You don't care if people are lost because you're just a real one was you allow there to be drums and music in church, which is leading our kids away from God, and you don't care about them and their spiritual welfare and them being in heaven. And my thing is, like, we can disagree theologically on this, and you can think that what I'm doing is leading people in the wrong direction, but it really irritates me that you would think that I would intentionally be doing that I would be deliberately trying to lead somebody in the wrong direction, that I don't have good intent. I don't understand why on earth you would think I would want to work the hours that I work for the pay that I get.
And this is my whole
to try to intentionally send people down the path of perdition, which is almost an exact quote of what I was told at one point. and so
I like that.
I mean,
points for using perdition.
We can disagree about theology, but let's not. And it'd be like me telling that person that they're deliberately trying to be nasty and mean. I don't think they are. I think they are being kind of nasty and mean, but I think that they're probably coming from a place of deep fear that if they don't do the right thing, that God's going to be angry at them, and my blood and the blood of the people I'm leading in the wrong direction will be on their heads if they don't say something. So I can come at it from that you're coming from a good place, but man, it frustrates me when people will go that route. And yeah.
Well, it was interesting this week as Lucas and I were over at the youth center early on, and as I was walking back over, I was in between services, and just so happened that one of the people I went to grade school with, she plays piano every so often for the kids over in Cradle Roll, and her dad happened to be here. I don't think I've seen him probably. He still lives in Green Bay most of the year. They come here and visit in the winter, as do many here in Florida. So still in Wisconsin, my home church. And he made a comment that last week, having seen Connected for the first time up front and personal, being here, he's like, it blows my mind, the creativity that this church has and just how warm and friendly. And he's like, but on top of all of it, the participation. He's like, you make the call and you've got, like, as a percentage of your whole church, of number of people whose names are on the books, as it were, and how many people are actually going out into the community to serve. He's like, that just blew my mind. He's like, I've never been at a church that, so not to toot our own horn to say how great we are, but if you're thinking about how do you affect this in the way that we're talking about, that, as Ken said, for the 10 bridesmaids, it's the internal change of the Holy Spirit. You're being a light to the world. Boom, check. You're not being punished for not taking risks, because we work with all kinds of organizations, and there's risk with everything that you do. And then, treating others on the way. So if you check those off, and just the attitude of whole life, I appreciated somebody else's outside view, not just someone that's here at church, but who comes occasionally and is here for a couple months out of the year and doesn't come to church here every week. I don't think, didn't seem like, but just how you could see in his face how genuine he was being with his comments. And so he's just like, kudos to you guys. He's like, I love this church. So I think that's a kind of a testament to how that works.
I love this church too.
Yeah.
I really am so proud to be a part of Whole Life, and for just the people that live out those three parables, that have the light shining from their lamps, that are using their resources without reservation for Jesus in so many ways, and that are feeding the hungry and giving water to the thirsty and clothing those who need clothing. There are just so many people in this church that just so embody all of that. We were at one of our families that takes part in Family Promise, which Family Promise is an amazing ministry here in town that networks churches together to provide shelter for families that are unhoused who are trying to get back on their feet. And so they'll go from one church to another church. They'll spend a week in each one of the churches. We're one of those churches that does that. And they had Family Promise had a thank you breakfast, I think, this Saturday that some of our church members who are very involved went to, and they were talking about how this one church, it was ours, just that this one of their clients' children said to them, it was the best week of my life that they spent here at our church. Is the best. Think about that for a second. It was, you are unhoused, and this is the best week of your life that you spend here. And that's because that's not because of Pastor Ken. That's because of all these volunteers who come in here and embrace these families and care about them and love on them. And it made me, that's risk. It's using of talents. It's showing your light. It's caring about those that, that society often just leaves out on the margins. And these families, this Family Promise is so phenomenal because these families, they spend, I think, on average about 3 to 6 months in this program, and then they're in homes. They get into homes. They reestablish themselves, and they do such a phenomenal job. So just a big shout out to that wonderful group. And then just so proud of just seeing what we did over our celebration of service Sabbath, our connected Sabbath, where we celebrate what's happening all year long. I just there are so many stories, and there's so many people that you don't even know that just quietly go about doing things. I just recently found out about one of our church members who's bilingual, who goes to does English as second language
Oh, wow.
classes, donates their time, very, busy life, and they go and volunteer to help families that need to learn how to speak English, and so that they can really thrive here in the United States. And that's one of I just tell you, people after person, I help out with this organization, I help out with that organization, and to me, I love it. I'm so proud of all of you.
All right. It's time for questions with Lucas. What do you got for
Yes,
us?
sir. We got 4 questions here. If someone never comes to understand the prophetic signs and symbolism, do you believe they can be fully prepared for Christ's return?
Yes.
Ooh, that falls under the risk category, Ken.
Yes. The same way that the thief on the cross didn't have to do a 28-part series before Christ said, I tell you, you will be with me in paradise. So yes, I don't think that we need to remember, and this is so pivotal, friends, the gospel is not about knowledge. It's about the power of Christ living in you. It is about a relationship with Jesus. Now, is it helpful to understand the signs? I believe so. Is it something we should ignore? No. Does it have a place? Absolutely. But as I said at the end of my sermon, the test is not over when Jesus is going to come back. It's about how you're behaving before he returns. That's it. It's about the relationship you're in with Christ and how that is affecting how you treat the others around you. And there's a lot of people who think that they can just be as nasty and mean as they want as long as they're keeping, quotes in quotes, the 10 Commandments. I never killed anybody. I never cheated on my spouse. I keep the Sabbath. I honor my parents. And yet, Jesus takes it to a far deeper place. He says, when he's talking, he says, he takes all these commandments and says, well, if you're angry with somebody, you're a murderer. If you look at lust at another person, you're an adulterer. And Jesus isn't saying that to make us like, oh no, I'm doomed. He's just saying, look, you have a lot of things that I'm going to need to transform in your life. And are you willing to turn it all over to me? Or do you just think just because you keep the bare minimum that that's just good enough? So this is not me discouraging studying last day events. I think it's way more helpful when you've been prepared ahead of time for a test to have information. I think so. But is that the determining factor? No.
Good. My question has always been, we have signs that are foretold that indicate the nearness of Christ's return. So even though we don't know exactly when he's coming back, how do we reconcile the idea that his return is when we least expect it, when he's told us to look for signs that will lead to his return?
What Jesus said is, let me interpret what I hear Jesus saying. When he says, when you see these signs, let it remind you to be ready. And pretty much all the signs he lists are things that happen. Wars, famines, earthquakes, disasters. And every time those things happen, I think it's a reminder that this isn't home, that Jesus is coming back. And I do believe, I genuinely believe Jesus is coming back soon. I really do. I believe that very much. And yet it doesn't change anything for me.
Right.
Because just because he's coming back soon doesn't mean that. And the other part is, I believe Jesus is coming back in all of our lifetime. And I don't think that my grandparents who have passed away believe that. And I believe that they weren't wrong either, because when you die, which often happens at a time you least expect, when you die, the next thing that you will see, if you are a Christian, is Jesus' second coming. That is the next thing that you will be woken up to, is Jesus' second coming. So truly, Jesus does come in everybody's lifetime, and death comes to us sometimes at the least expected times. Sometimes it's expected and sometimes it's not. So for me, there's just not a contradiction in what Jesus is saying, because clearly, by the way, read Paul, read John the Revelator, all of them believe they were living in the last days of Earth's history too. That's what they said. Knowing that you are living in the last days, do X, Y, and Z. And I just don't think there's a contradiction at all. I think that for every single one of us, we have these pivotal moments in our life that really do genuinely matter, where we need to be completely 100% given over to Christ.
Well, and I think that, the book of Matthew was written quite a while after Jesus died. And I think at that point, there are a lot of people who were starting to pass away, who were expecting Jesus to come right away. A lot of people were dying, and there was kind of this panic of, wait a minute, I thought Jesus was coming.
Yeah.
And I think what the author of the Gospel of Matthew, by recording those words of Jesus, I think it's in the context of, hey, don't be surprised. I'm telling you this so you won't be surprised. It's not so that you can count down the signs and figure out, are we close? Are we not close? It's more like, hey, relax. It's under control. We knew this was coming. It's okay.
Yeah.
And if you look at, the book of Revelation, it's called the revelation of Jesus Christ, not the revelation of everything you need to know before Jesus comes again, or how to get ready for the end time, or that's not what it's about. The book is supposed to be a revelation of Jesus. And so if we're looking at it, trying to see the character of Jesus, the character of God shining through it, then that's going to be a different approach than if we're reading through it, sort of meticulously trying to calculate all the days and hours and signs and things like that. And the more focused we are on the specifics and the numbers and the times, that's time that we're not spending doing the very things that Jesus asked us to do while we wait.
And Jesus gives all those, and the Bible gives us all these signs and things for, I think, a different purpose than sometimes they're used. If you know you're on a roller coaster, you approach things differently than if you think you're on a plane that's crashing. And if you know that the Bible has said all these things are going to happen, this is no surprise, this is going to happen, and you can see that, well, then when you're on the ride, you know how the ride ends. Mm-hmm. You know that you know what's going to happen. You don't have to be afraid. I know how this roller coaster works. Why? Because I've seen other people go it. I know the person who created it. I'm fine. Whereas if you're on a plane that's going, in severe turbulence and you hear the engines go out, you're like, well, this is it. I'm terrified. In fact, Jesus goes out of his way to say, I tell you these things so that you may have peace. Yeah. And I think that often really gets missed because so many people are terrified by last days preaching. And when the whole point of what Jesus said he was trying to do, and I believe the point of Revelation is to say, hey guys, I know what's going to happen. Here it is. Here's the cheat sheet. You know what's going to happen. It's, the ride's going to go upside down for a little bit. There's going to be a corkscrew over here, but don't worry. You're going to come to the end. The shoulder restraints are going to work. You're going to be okay.
You might even throw up.
You might even throw up.
It could happen. It's not pleasant, but
you might even pass out. We don't know, but the point is, you will be safe.
Well, and I like what you said about, when it came to, maybe it was you, Melanie, that said, trying to figure all that out. We're spending time doing what God isn't really intending us to do. We're not taking care of others. We're trying to figure out dates. We're trying to probably in some place in ourselves figure out, how am I going to protect myself? How am I going to know? And I'll be the best at it. And then I can help other people, because I'll have the answers. And I'm like, look at every time that happens, you have another 1844, right? Someone's predicting something. And then it was, how many years ago, 2000, that was going to be it because the computers weren't going to be able to do what they were going to do.
Last year, there was a whole...
Right? And then when was the Mayan calendar? That was
right.
2012, right?
Uh-huh.
So every time those come to pass, And then, people get really worked up and it's a frenzy, it's panic, it's all of these things, and it's real for people. Instead of, like you said, if we're concentrating on the other pieces and making sure other people are coming along and just being like, yeah, chill.
There's a really book that I very much enjoyed called A Thousand Shall Fall, about a Seventh-day Adventist man who lived through Nazi Germany. And one of the things that gave his family peace through that horrific time period was their understanding of Scripture and their understanding of prophecy. And because he had that understanding, he refused to do the things that the Nazi regime was asking him to do, because he recognized the signs and he knew what was and wasn't going to be happening, that there wasn't going to be 1,000-year Reich, that he understood these things. And so that's the purpose of these things. And he made it through that circumstance, and because of that, and it's been a long time since I've read it, so for any of you who've read it recently, if I'm messing up, I apologize. But my point is, are you finding peace in the Bible, or are you finding angst? If you're finding angst, as we're going to talk about in 2 weeks, you might not be reading it the way God wanted you to read it.
Yeah. Well, and I also liked what you said about, if you die before Jesus comes, to me, there's a great comfort in how you live, even just your regular life, even if you're not Christian, if you had that understanding and had that knowledge, because it's like, well, that's the next thing, and it's not the worst. And I think there's a comfort in that.
Well, shouldn't Christians be the most at peace people on earth? Shouldn't we be the ones, like, when you see the things that are happening around the world right now? I don't blame people who don't have a
That's true.
Christian understanding for being terrified. There's some really scary stuff happening in this world right now if you don't know how the story ends.
Yeah.
I think also, Ken, you said that you can definitely be ready. I think the opposite is true as well at the same time, that nobody's actually going to be ready.
Yeah.
Oh,
because there's no, there's no Tomahawk missiles in Matthew 24. There's no, there's no AI in Matthew 20. Well, I guess you could read between the lines and find it, but there's so many things that nobody could even conceive of when Jesus was talking. What's that?
It's not in my calendar.
It's not in my calendar.
If it's not in my calendar, it's definitely going to be a surprise.
But I mean, the point is, I think there's also peace in knowing nobody's going to get this right.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to know all the things and be fully prepared for all the things, because
all 10 bridesmaids went to sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was good. We have one more, Lucas?
We have 2 more.
Oh, 2 more. Okay.
Yeah. There seems to be a theme of resources in the story of the 10 bridesmaids in the parable of the talents. In the first story, the wise bridesmaid hold onto the limited oil for their lamps so they will not run out. Can God use those with limited resources for his cause?
Yeah.
I think God especially likes using people with limited resources for his cause. I mean, we see, I'm just in my worship time right now, I'm reading through the book of Judges, and just read about Gideon today. And he pares Gideon's army down to 300 people. So yeah, God loves limited resources. And the reason God loves it so much is because when you have limited resources, you know where the power is coming from.
Yeah, exactly.
So the last question is, how can we show compassion to those affected by the current events in the Middle East, despite having different religions?
I think that could look like a lot of different things. I think that one of the number one things you can do is not say demeaning things about people that you don't know.
Yep.
And that you're, that you're not in their place. I think you can have compassion in your heart. I think it is when I think about the people who live in regimes with oppressive governments, we kind of are like, well, just overthrow them. Like it's that easy. Like that's something that just can happen. So I think one of the things we can do is we can have compassion in our hearts. I think we can speak kindly. I think we can avoid saying things on our social media feeds that are derogatory towards those people. I think that one of the other things we can do is we can ask our public policymakers and our politicians to also be compassionate, to think about what's good for this country and for the rest of the world. I think that there's also ways that you can, if you have the financial means, send financial support to some really amazing groups out there that provide relief, disaster relief to people in places like this that are going through horrific experiences. I think that we so often as Christians, we just somehow forget that Jesus said to love your enemies, to love the people who do bad things to you. And we're like, well, we got to do bad things to them before they do bad things to us. And you know what? I'm not a politician. That's not my realm of things, but I am a pastor. And what I would tell any one of my church members is there is definitely, I believe, a God-given right to defend yourself, protect yourself. And there's also a call in the Bible to be as compassionate and loving as we possibly can, even to the people who are the most horrendous out there. And so I think that one of the other things, by the way, I've discovered in life, and this, maybe I don't know if there's a side quest or not, but one of the other things in life that I've discovered more often than I wish I had is that so many times I view myself as the hero, and 5 or 10 years later, I see how I was a little bit villainous. And how what I put on that other person was not entirely fair, sometimes not fair at all, and how I actually contributed to the situation. And so one of the things I'm trying to be a little bit more humble about, and it's a work in progress, is that feel strongly about what I believe, yes, but also leave open the possibility to allow God to show me where I'm not living up to what he wants from me as well, and how I might be more of a part of the problem than I realize.
Hindsight.
Yeah.
I think it was over the weekend. It was something happened at the house, and we were trying to assess blame. And I was like, I'm always reminded of, and then Randy looked in the mirror. Dang it. It was that guy again.
That guy.
That guy's caused me more heartache. Anyway, so that wraps up this one. The end game was just a oneer. Now what do we got?
It was a standalone, and then we have Javier Diaz.
That's right.
Do you know what he's preaching on?
I do. He's preaching on peace.
Ooh.
Which seems apropos for
very apropos.
Right now. Yeah.
And then the sermon right after that will be me again, and it will be again another standalone, and I am calling it True Religion. True Religion.
All right. Do we know if Javier is going to be available for the podcast?
I have asked.
I can't imagine that Javier would not be available to do the podcast, because he is a podcaster, so he has a deep appreciation for.
I'm thinking he's not going to miss, but I'm hoping we can. Okay, cool. So that and then that brings us, man. Then we're almost to Easter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
So I just want to make sure we plug Easter.
We are plugging Easter, yes. And Easter is going to be, we have our regular, we have our Tenebrae service, which is something that actually New City hosts and we participate in, which is really nice. That's on Thursday night. And then on Saturday, we have our Easter program, which is our normal Easter program for Sabbath. And then we're doing something a little bit different this year. We are going to do an Easter sunrise service. So.
Wait. Along with everything else?
Along with
Sunday
everything else.
Sunday morning, 7 a.m.
We'll see you there, Randy.
There will be joy in the morning.
Allegedly.
As long as there's coffee, Randy's like, so.
How do you spell joy?
You can come in your
COFFE.
pajamas if you need to. It's okay.
The nice thing about this service, Melanie, we're keeping it to about 30 minutes?
About 30 minutes.
So it'll be from 7 to 7:30. We are finalizing the location of that. We will let you know as soon as we do, but it should be very close to the church. We're trying to find a very beautiful spot where you will be able to see the sun come up. And so we're going to do that, 7 a.m. Sunday morning. We hope that you'll join us. For those of you who are asking, well, is it going to be live streamed? The answer is no, it will not. We will see if we can do that on future ones, but this year for our first go around, we're going to just go ahead and keep it pretty simple. But here's what you can do. Wherever you're at, about 15 minutes before the sun comes up, you can wake yourself up, go sit somewhere where you have a view of the sunrise, and just spend some time in prayer and reflection on Christ's resurrection, which is basically what we're going to be doing. This service is going to be beautiful, but it's also going to be very simple. We're not. It's going to be a very simple service where we celebrate Jesus' resurrection, and so really grateful to Melanie for working on that with, like you said, Randy, with everything else that's going on. Appreciate you putting that together.
Nice.
And I think I think it's going to be really special.
I like it. All right, then, guys, you already know what I'm going to say next. It's wholelife.church/events. That way you'll find out about Easter. If you're not part of the podcast, you probably don't even know about the sunrise service yet, because I don't think we've put it out anywhere. And Tenebrae is something we do every year, but every year someone's like, Tenebrae?
What is that?
What is that? How long have we been doing Tenebrae? And it's like, it's been a couple of years that we've been doing that. So,
well, just for people who don't know what it is, it's a service of shadows is what it's called. Tenebrae means darkness in Latin. And basically, I think a lot of times we skip to the resurrection and we don't take the time to experience what came before the resurrection, which I think can help us appreciate the resurrection more.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful, beautiful service. If you haven't seen it or you haven't been part of it, definitely come out. It's Thursday night. I believe that's April 2nd at 6:30.
Well, we'll make sure before this hits that it's at least in there. There might be more details to come. Always go to the events calendar, and we do something called Save the Date, where it's like, look, we don't know exactly what time this is going to be. We don't know location, like sunrise service. We don't exactly know that yet. So, but there's a new feature in our events calendar that just came out, and you click on the little button above it, right above the graphic, and it will actually let you put it into your calendar with a one click. So whether you have iCal, whether you have Gmail, Google, and that way it's in your calendar. You're not going to forget, and you at least have it marked down. And then you can say, oh, I wonder if there's more details. Go back to the events. We'll always add the details as soon as we have them.
That's just too easy.
So easy.
We try.
You're so great.
So, hey, guys, that's going to do it for this week. As always, catch the message, whether that's live online, in person, every Saturday, and you can also catch it on Speaking of Grace. Before second service ends, usually Speaking of Grace is up. And then, get your questions ready. Text, voicemail, email, and Tuesday by about noon. And then that'll be episode 511 next week, guys. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. Thanks for listening to This Is Whole Life. If today's conversation resonated with you, we invite you to subscribe, share, and leave a review on your favorite listening platform. To join the conversation, send a text or voicemail to 407-965-1607 or email podcast@wholelife.church. To learn more about Whole Life Church, worship with us online or in person, visit our website, wholelife.church. Until next time, this is Whole Life.